what is this? Come on. He said, that's you, man.
Do you have that moment? Do you have that spark?
I just came home from a pleasure trip. I took my wife to the airport. Excuse me. Can I quit this podcast?
I told Eddie Murphy to stay in college so he'd have something to fall back on. I did great advice. Jackie, how about the lighter side of history? The lighter side.
I'm done laughing at my joke.
Okay. I know a lot of things and I share them on the podcast and you don't care.
What are we talking about?
I can't get a word in edgewise on this show. I mean, it's...
Here's how we sell it.
Okay.
I tell people because the Crescent Beach Club is a glorious restaurant on the water in Bayville, and before it was the Crescent Beach Club, it was an old wooden clam diggers bar and they used to have these big shacks out in the park, not the parking lot, but in the front yard that just had roofs, but no sides, where they had clam bakes and lobster bakes and everything like that. And I put on a show there in '79, and I mean, Carol Leifer and Paul Reiser and Jerry Seinfeld and Rick Overton, everybody worked that stupid show. And I had a big hand-painted banner, you know, I'll never forget, because I called it the Long Smiland All-Star Comedy Review. And Ron Richards said, if you're going to go that much trouble, you might as well spell comedy with a K. And we did the show, and then I went to Fort Lauderdale and did a couple of weeks, and they invited me to go on a Windjammer barefoot cruise. So I went on a cruise for a week, and they shanghaied me and kept me a second. So I'm away for like 3 weeks now. And I come home, and Red McCready, my friend, picks me up at the airport. And I got off the plane, and I said, all right, what's the worst news? He says, we lost the gig at Reinhardt's. I said, we pack the place every week. They're making a fortune. It's the greatest show. Why did they cancel it? He said, Reinhardt's was a huge bar, and there was a fake wall that to divide because the room was so huge. It was a fake wall with a door in it. And I guess I was on stage about to start the show, and the door opened. They were having a council meeting, and the Bayville Board of Governors, what it is, I guess, came out of the door, and Red said that while you're getting ready to start the show, you're on stage just starting the show, and the council came through the door, and you told the mayor that he had a bald forehead from doing U-turns under the sheets. So that was it. I'm like, it's a funny joke.
It's a great show.
How could he not laugh?
I think you told thousands of people that over the years.
Oh my God. Vinny, the owner of Neptune Pub, where the band played for 10 years, that's where I stole that joke.
Oh.
But, you know, the gigs were so much fun, but in the beginning, it really was the Wild West in the beginning.
It was.
One time I had to turn off, I think they were in triple overtime, and I didn't know anything from hockey in those days, and I was with Carol Leifer and a couple other city people. For all I know, you were there, and the owner basically said, if you don't start the show, you're not getting paid. And I knew that I had to absorb and pay, and I climbed up, and these guys are sitting at the bar watching probably the
Islanders when they were incredible. They were,
and I turned it off. I remember Carol Leifer was like, you know, you earn your money, you know.
I was on stage at Rascals Comedy Club in New Jersey when Mookie Wilson let the ball go through his legs in the 1986 World Series. And I heard the cheering upstairs, and I felt so alone. There were just a few people, but the show must go on.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's crazy.
I mean, it was the Wild West. That's the best way to put it. I've seen, and you've seen, outrageous things. Comics talk about the outrageous things because most nights are great. You know?
Yeah, you never, you know, did you hear that Bales killed in Boston?
Oh.
No. Did you hear that Minervini killed in Florida? No. Did you hear that Rob Bartlett died in Kansas City?
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
That's right.
You know.
Or the power goes out, or there's a fight, or something like that. You know the famous line where your parents' first cousins, which is now only a hack comedian would do it. I was there when somebody said it for the first time. The comic strip Jack Grayman on very late. Crowd is burned out. I'm in the back. He's bombing with a capital B, an awkward silence, and one member of the audience goes, "Were your parents first cousins?" And the comics died laugh. We fell over in the back, and we started doing that as a heckle line, and the rest is history.
That's
saw
so
it.
fun. That's
I
so
saw
fun. One of my best heckle lines, I got the same way. I was on stage, and when somebody heckles you, you try and shut them up, but you can't respond every time they say something, especially when it's one of these kind of rowdy crowds. You pick your spots. So he heckles you, and you shut them up, and you wait a while. And they heckle, hold on, and then you. So this some guy, it was Shirley's in Louisville, Kentucky, and this guy called out, and then a little while later he called out, and after about the third time he called out, I'll never forget, there was an aisle, and this huge woman, she was the size of a house, was sitting there, and she turned to the guy and said, "If we wanted to hear you, we'd have went to your house."
That's so funny.
I use that forever because it's so innocent.
Now, Stump the Joke Man is a phenomenon because you have an encyclopedic knowledge of jokes, and it really is impossible to stump you. But I was at a show when you were stumped, and I just think it's so funny. A guy said to you, "Hey, Jackie," he's trying to stump you. "What goes up and down without warning?" And you didn't have an answer, which was amazing. And then the guy goes, "Your weight."
I remember that like it was Club Benet. It was Club Benet, and the guy, 700 people, and the guy was in the corner. And the place went nuts because they were all Stern fans, and they'd watch me on Nutrisystem and off Nutrisystem.
Because you were thinking he had a real joke, but he actually had written that for that.
It was so great.
Oh, they exploded.
I have so many stories. There's one guy at a place in Lake Apatcong, those Palazzo's gigs, that really was the Wild West, in the barrooms. And I was on stage playing Stump the Joke Man, and some guy way in the back goes, "Jackie, where's your license plate?" And I said, "I don't know." And he went like this, and he took off, and I was like, and people told me like a couple weeks later, they went into that bar. You know how the bartender has crap behind it? My license plate was just up there,
Said Joke Man.
Joke Man. It's so much fun. So much fun.
Oh, so you drove home without a license plate?
So, yeah. I don't know if it was from the front or the back, but it just
That's...
the stories, I had one girl, and it was on the Rascals Comedy Hour. It was literally on television. And the girl came up and stumped me with a Jewish joke. And it was such an easy joke. It was the kind of joke where I would know every joke like that in the world. And I just drew a blank. And she told me the answer, and I was like, "I can't believe I didn't get that." And she said, "Neither can I, because I stumped you with the same joke right here 2 years ago." Just for some reason, it was just
a mental block.
The first time I saw Otto and George was at the Rainy Night House in Queens, which was this long and this wide. So the stage was here. So there was room for like one row of tables here with the room for the waitress here. And Otto and George were there. And we were so in the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
And me and Bartlett were sitting. If this is Otto and George, and here's the aisle, and here's me and Bartlett. And we don't know what to expect. And there's like the stage, a row of tables, the aisle, and another row of tables. And Otto and George get up there, and he's got George, and they, "Hello, how you doing?" And we're wondering, and out of a clear blue sky, and this is, you're still naive enough to think that a lot of the stuff people are making up as they go along, and you find out that 99.9% of even the ad libs are ad libs. I mean, I got hundreds of ad libs. Some of them that I started in 1979, but you keep them because they're funny.
He was doing an advanced kind of comedy where it was so bad it was good, like The Producers.
Right.
So bad it was
crazy
good.
over the top.
And that's why we went to see him, because it was over the top and so bad it was good.
Do you know John Schuller?
Sure.
So
Worked
John
for him a million times.
John Schuller is such a nice guy, and Minervini disappeared in the early days and went to Florida for a couple months. And that's where he befriended Jackie Mason, and he wanted to bring in Mason back, and Jackie Mason opened the East Side Comedy Club. It was the opening week of the East Side Comedy Club, and we all took turns opening for him, and it was very exciting. But Minervini has a horrible reputation for taking people's, but who cares? It's his personality. He could read the phone book. He's just being funny. But he came back from Florida, and he's got 20 minutes of this killer show. And we're like, wow, Richie's really on fire. And then like a year later, John Schuller moves to New York or to Connecticut. And all of a sudden he's booked at the East Side. And he starts his act, and we're like, there's Richie's 20 minutes, General Patton and all those different. So funny.
There are comics who talk about going into a club for a week and they start doing their act. And the guy who was there the week before had stolen so much stuff from them that they go, hey, you're doing Joey's act. No, it's my act.
I'll tell you a story that happened so long ago that there was still a phone in the comedy condo in Fort Lauderdale. Think about how long ago that was, because there was only a phone there for 5 minutes. And I think it was the first time I ever worked there, or the second time I ever worked there, and I'm brand new, and I'm so thrilled to be on the road because I'm so new. And the only reason I got the gig is because I had brought Rodney Dangerfield there when you guys were there. So I'm sitting there, and the phone rings. I'm there with Adam Leslie. The phone rings, and I say, hello, and this is Mark Schiff. And completely, for no reason at all, I say, oh, Mark, that's really funny that you'd call. We're just sitting around trying to decide who's going to do your act tonight. And he says, that's why I'm calling. Is Adam Leslie there? Adam had been at Yuck Yucks, had to do a second or third show, didn't have the material, and did what he remembered of Schiff's act, and he didn't know Schiff. And Schiff came in the next week, and people, that's Adam Leslie's act. And you said, I didn't need, the classic thing of all time is when the guy's on the phone and you don't hear, you just hear, but oh God.
That's probably the origin of what I brought up. I probably heard that from you.
Oh, it's so funny.
Oh, it's
so
just
funny.
amazing.
I never get sick of it. So the bottom line of this interview, if that's what we're calling it, is, we're doing a benefit very soon for an old comic friend that is having some medical problems. And I always wonder, if you and me and Bartlett sat like this on stage and told these stories, do you think the crowd would like it, or do you think that...
I think this show is going to find an audience, definitely.
I think it'd be gold, right?
I think it would too. Absolutely.
But the bottom line is, this stupid show that I'm doing, it's just an excuse for me to talk about myself a little bit, but it's a whole different thing when we're both talking, when we have similar things. But that's so cool. I was in plays when I was a kid, but I was just petrified, and I didn't do anything. Like, I'm one of those kids in first grade, I was a candy cane. It's like the equivalent of in football, you do this, and on Martling, you go long. It's like they don't have anything for you to do.
I was in Carousel in high school, and on the program it said Peter Bales, ... 11th sailor. That was an incredible, I had such a big role.
That's so, in high school, this is a great high school play story. They did a serious play. And what is the point? It should be fun and goofy. And this is not the chorus, a musical like I was in Fiorello, but I had a small part. And different musicals, but this was the senior play. And they chose a senior play called Letters to Lucerne. And the premise was, it's all the girls in a girls' school from all different countries. And the war escalates. And there's a German girl, there's a Jewish girl, there's an Italian girl, and all of a sudden the war escalates. And I was one of the girls, I was the German girl's brother and I think my girlfriend was Jewish, whatever. But at intermission, everybody went out to get a smoke, and I got killed. Okay, but the opening, I had to walk in, and all the girls are there, and I leaned over, and I had to kiss a girl on the lips. And when you do the show, they do the show Friday and Saturday, but Friday afternoon you do it for the school body. And all my buddies were in the front row, and I leaned over to kiss this girl, and my buddy, in a stage whisper, goes, "Kiss her on the..."
Oh my God. All right.
And it was priceless. But meanwhile, the main thing is...
And the amazing thing was you did it.
So the premise is that the war escalates so much, and I get shot down and get killed, and they're in this 1940s school, and there's a huge old-time radio. And during intermission, the radio comes out, and the girls in the play are like 8 or 10 buddies. They're high school seniors. They're all really good pals. So the play was good. They were very realistic. And I'll never know if he did it on purpose. When they started auditioning people for the role of Hans, only one guy went out for the role, John Kramer, who was like a 210-pound Jewish kid. And like, he wasn't Hans. And they came to me and said, "Jackie, you got to be in the play because it can't be." So John Kramer became the stage manager. So I don't know whether he did this on purpose, but here's all these girls. Oh, it's so bad. Hans got killed, and the point is, the letters came from the families, and they stopped letting the letters through to the girls because they didn't want to know what was going on. So when I blah, 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 and one of the girls had to turn. She said, "Look, they've even taken out the radio." And he didn't take out the radio. Oh. So when she said, "Look, they've even taken the radio," and there it is, the girls, nobody had the show business sense to say, "Wait, it's a mistake, take out the radio, now they went through the entire heartbreaking scene giggling. And like in class when you don't want to giggle.
Yeah.
The drama coach was going to commit suicide. There was a big deal. Not commit suicide, but they weren't going to do the play the next night because she was so upset. It was the biggest scandal. And we never found out if John Kramer left it there on purpose, but it's very funny.
I have to tell you this story. We're just talking. John Barrymore was an incredible classic actor, but his downfall was he had a serious drinking problem. But late in his career, they found a role for him in a Shakespeare play as one of the counselors. And the little messenger boy comes in and he says to the counselors, "My lord lies dead on the battlefield." He messed up his line, because if the Lord is dead on the battlefield in the first act, you can't finish this play. The whole thing is messed up. And John Barrymore was brilliant enough to improvise in Shakespearean language, "Knave, dost thou not mean my lord lies grievously wounded on the battlefield?" And the kid picks up and goes, yes, he's grievously wounded on the battlefield, and I will bring my message back to him. And he runs off, and John Barrymore goes, "That's good, because thou hast fucked up enough for one night."
That's just classic.
That's a classic story.
And when things happen like that, there's people in that, somebody has been telling that story to the people that they know.
Yeah.
The Marx Brothers did a thing where they all, when it was your birthday, they were doing some stage play, and it was your birthday, everybody chipped in, you got a bathrobe. And then they chipped in and you got a bathrobe. But all of a sudden you realize there's a lot of people and a lot of bathrobes, a lot of money, so that somebody said, "All right, we're going to cut it off." And they must have cut it off just before Groucho's birthday. And they're in the middle of the play, and there was a trunk on stage. And in the middle of the play, the trunk opens up, and Groucho stood up and says, "Where's my goddamn bathrobe?" And of course the audience has no idea. But imagine being in that audience and telling that story for the rest of your life.
Peter OToole was in a play in London, and they played a joke on an actor who made an entrance upstage center, marched right down to the front of the stage and gave a dramatic soliloquy. And what they did was, They measured a fishing hook and a line exactly perfectly so that when he went down to the center stage to give his soliloquy, marched down there, it was perfect to pull his wig off. They put the hook on him on his wig, right before he made his entrance, and he walked down perfectly, and the wig goes flying off. I love. That's just fun. I mean, it's just silliness.
You cannot get enough of it. You can't.
I love it. I love it.
Me and Bates and Herbie, the off-hour rockers, wound up breaking up, and of course we had a couple of gigs left, like at Neptune's, and it was all my songs, and mostly me telling the jokes. You know, I used to yell at my partner because he wouldn't write songs, and so we did. So it was the classic thing, my classic show business story of where there's a 3-man band, and they said, Jackie, we're leaving to start our own band. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know, if there's 3 people in the band, if 2 people leave, that's throwing me out of the band. But the last night, I had a foot tambourine with a piece of wood across the bottom with a piece of rubber on top of it, and I was going to bring it today, and it was in my left foot, and that's, you know, I'd stomp it on the wild songs and just tap it on the other songs. They screwed it to the stage.
Oh.
It still has the holes where they screwed it. And the first time I went to lift my leg, it was like Christmas for them. You know, take that, you son of a bitch.
And the last thing you said to the off-hour rockers as you were leaving was, come on!
Come on!
Hey, a new episode of Stand Up Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
It's starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? MeSpace?
MySpace?
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah.